Alright, so today's video is going to be about my generation and how we've pretty much already failed before we've even taken off. Now, why is it that I have to make this video, or why am I jumping the gun so much on the future of my generation? Call us whatever you want, millennials, Generation Z or Z if you're that way inclined. We will always be known as that generation with the biggest potential and the biggest failure that ever existed because we couldn't even realise that potential. Now, you know what? Some of you who are a glass half full thinking of amongst you will think, but Mitch, come on. Most of your generation are barely in their 20s, barely in their 30s. There's time to improve. There's time to grow and mature and to use this technology and things that modern life has granted you to make the world a better place. Well, I just have to say, well, that's bullshit. I mean, for starters, in universities, we are literally building and growing an army full of sheep who will do the bidding of their bloody lecturers, their governments, their activist leaders, all in the name of social justice because they think there's some perceived oppression in the world. They're growing literally an army of sexists and racists. Ironically so, because these people are supposed to be against this thing. They're supposed to be against sexism. They're supposed to be against racism. Yet they are the biggest progenitors of said racism and sexism. So again, we've failed on that front. Basically, most of my generation, not all of us, because, you know, I'm the way I am, and Dreamy Diglett is the way she is, and Oscar's the way he is, and Spinosaurus Kin is the way he is, and Griffiths is the way she is. You know, all these people, you know, we're the exceptions to the rule. Most of our generation are the dream generation, that a generation currently in power, which used to be the baby boomers, but they're retiring now. So it's the people after them, my mum and my dad, their generation is now in power. And this generation is an absolute godsend to them because this is the first generation that has nothing to rebel against, or at least have been given a situation where there's nothing to rebel against by the establishment so that it can be easily controlled. And this is what they've created. They somehow managed to create the ultimate generation that are obedient by being disobedient. It's kind of hard to explain. Just look at what these student protesters, these people on the internet, these social justice warriors, and even some normies are rebelling against. And they're rebelling against the good work that these baby boomers, that these older people fought for ages in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s. You know, all these great civil rights causes, they are fighting against that very thing. They are actually kind of the forces of orthodoxy. They've created an orthodoxical, if that's even a word, generation. And that's the problem with my generation. They are probably the most sheepish. They're the most easily controlled, considering the fact that we have all information at the palm of our hands in this. You know, you could become enlightened through this, through using the internet, if you so wish. But they don't seem to use the internet for good. They seem to use the internet for bad. And then accuse us of using the internet for bad, even though we're just trying to open their minds to say, look, you are fighting for the orthodoxy of this world. We live in a situation that is arse backwards, but they view it in an arse backwards way. This is just a strange rant, people, I know, but bear with me because this is a confusing time in which we live in. Instead, we just seem to just play Pokemon Go. We seem to just be on our phones and PCs and our video games, which I like. I love playing my video games, but I don't play them and then become a slacktivist. I actually try to do shit. I actually try to live a life. I try to be learned. I try to do all these things. I don't see most of my generation doing that. They seem to just be content to go around walking in places where it's known there to be a high robbery rate, playing Pokemon Go and then getting robbed. Yes, this happened. Some of my friends did this and they got robbed. That sums up my generation. They seem to be the most stupid, or at least have the least amount of common sense, because it's just not been taught to them. They seem to have been taught to live in this bubble, and this bubble is burst. That's them finished. And it's not. I just don't know what's going on. I hear constantly from the older people that, you know, like Mr. Medica saying that my generation seem to be the most entitled. They want everything on a silver platter. And I can't help but think, is that just the rich ones? Or is it people in general, or even the people who were born with nothing thinking that they deserve something, even though, you know, if they work hard enough, they do. There's definitely an entitlement issue with my generation. They have nothing to fight against. They have nothing. They seem to. There's nothing to rally behind. There's no big cause of the day. Of course, there are causes, but they happen to be the causes that they think are the enemy, when actually these causes are trying to be for their benefit, but they've been brainwashed to such an extent that they cannot even see that. Amazing. And I don't even blame any particular ideology for this, really. I mean, all the generations of the past have a kind of a fault to blame for all this. They're the ones who raised this generation, raised us. Some of us were lucky to still be raised in a way that most humans were, but for the vast majority of us, it seems that they were raised in such a way that, well, look at the result. An entitled, lazy, basically a generation that demands everything but works for nothing. They just don't see the point. They are basically what the baby boomers fought against. Is this what's happening? I dread to think about what the new generation growing up are going to be like. Who knows? Maybe they will be the generation that my generation were meant to be. Who knows? Or maybe they'll be the alt-right generation. They'll be the alt-right social justice warriors. Because I have a theory that the pendulum will swing to the right, and I don't think we'll ever see the pendulum slowly just stay in the middle. At least for a little while, maybe another 20 years. So by then I'll be bloody old and decrepit in my 30s and just wondering what went wrong. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. Maybe we will find this second enlightenment that people are demanding, but you can't demand an enlightenment. It has to happen. There has to be a situation, a series of conditions and events to take place that enable this enlightenment to happen. And at the moment, I don't think we live in that situation right now. We live in, and to be honest, it's not even these kids' fault. It's not really my generation's fault that we live in this way, though we're perpetuating it, although people like me are trying to break it down. We live in a place where it seems like free thought, different ideas, radical ideas are kind of frowned upon. And the only ideas that aren't frowned upon are ideas that were thought of 40 years ago, and these people have either just discovered it or they think it's somehow this amazing thing. But remember, it's probably feminism trying to put that victimhood thing in so that they think they're always oppressed, but they're not. And I just wish that this could change, but I don't know how I'm going to change it. There's billions of us, and you're not going to change all their minds, are you? And I think I'll end the video there. I could ramble on and repeat myself if I wanted to. It's already been incoherent because it's just an emotional stream of consciousness rant, really. I'm just sick of it. My generation, to quote The Who on lesser extent Limp Bizkit, are failing. We are letting ourselves down. We have this massive potential, or at least we did when we were growing up. As people said, we have the power of knowledge in the palm of our hands and we choose not to use it. And that is probably what's going to be our biggest undoing. For the baby boomers, it was becoming what they hated, what they despised. The establishment. You know, they wanted to create the free love. They wanted to create this big society that would be loving and peaceful, and they would end the Cold War and all that. They did end the Cold War, but now they seem to have created a whole new consensus and they've become what they thought. As for the generation after them, well, I don't know. It remains to be seen what they will be like, and it also remains to be seen what Generation X will end up being. I only hope that it's not as bad as this, but maybe we're seeing the fruits of their labour now. So until next time, this has been ChampiMan93. If you like my video, give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, subscribe. If you love it, donate to the Patreon. Links down below, and I'll see you all later. The kids are not alright.